On this episode of Southeast Iowa Today, I take you to the Henry County Board of Supervisors meeting on Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024, where they have discussion with Henry County Sheriff Rich McNamee about the importance of a 14th deputy. Lots of discussion. The sheriff brought guests from New London School District as well as Winfield School District. Supervisors listened to all of them and also to a lot of citizens that were there at the meeting as well and came up with the approval. I've got the meeting here for you. It's rather lengthy, but it's very good information, and it's brought to you by Griner Auto Body of Washington, Iowa, using state-of-the-art techniques and decades of experience to get your car back on the road after an accident. Car Doctor of Washington, Iowa, no matter who Frankensteined it, they can fix and clean and customize it. McDonald Boneyard of Keota, Iowa, for all of your farm equipment and auto recycling needs. Hinshaw Trailer Sales of Richland, Iowa. You need a trailer? They've got your trailer, and they fix what they sell and don't in their full-time repair shop. Girling Repair of Winfield, Iowa. If your mower is dead, call Fred, your Husqvarna, Aaron's, and Gravely dealer. B&B Propane and the family of Jet Stops present Southeast Iowa Today. I'm John Bain, author of Christie's Journey, The Beat Goes On. Let's get right to the meeting.
Today, I will just remind you of this data we talked about last week. We have commitment from New London and Winfield schools to reimburse the county for expenses incurred penny for penny. It isn't just the wage, it's total cost reimbursement from those schools for the time our deputies are in that school. I did a little research over the last week just to talk about mass shootings in schools. Since 2018, there's been 192 shootings in schools in America. 338 people have lost their life or been hurt in a school shooting in America in the last 6 years. And we've had 10 active school shootings in 2024 already, and this is April 2nd. 10 of them already in America. One of those, we all know, is in Perry, Iowa. It's right here. It's within 2 hours of here. I'm trying to take a proactive approach to this, and that's why I asked you to reconsider my denied proposal for a deputy back in January. So I'm asking you to reconsider that simply because I think we need to be proactive. We need to take an active approach to thwart this kind of stuff. So that's why I'm back here today. And I would encourage anybody in the public that has an opinion before you guys make your decision to do so. With that, I'll leave it right at that.
Okay. I'm going to ask a question of you, Richard. When you brought your budget in, you have 12 deputies listed. That doesn't include you.
Correct.
But it says a 14th deputy for a resource officer.
Okay, 14th person. There's 12. There was 13 on there. Plus,
12.
I can't argue without the paper in front of me,
Okay.
Greg. I know what I have. I have 12 deputies myself. That's 13. I'm asking to add one.
Okay, so but it says 14th deputy. You're not considered a deputy.
No, I'm including myself in that list because I'm
I
also a
understand,
call
but-
taker.
Okay, but there's 12.
It's tit for tat.
12
I'm
deputies.
asking for one more person.
12 deputies and one has resigned. So
I'm asking to add a person.
okay, I'm just clarifying what's listed on the agenda.
I'm asking to add a deputy sheriff.
If I may, out of curiosity, if the school districts are paying us to do that, why would we not keep our kids safe? And I realize there's future costs, et cetera, with that, but man, our kids are pretty dang important.
I agree.
And I don't believe that it's a matter of if, I think it's when something here can happen. I think we need to look at it that way. I don't have kids in school anymore. You guys know that, but, man, they're pretty important. If you were to lose a kid, what would you do? If you could have prevented it, if you could have had someone there to help.
I have 4 grandsons in the Mount Pleasant School District. I have nieces and nephews in the New London School District. I have a grandson in the Winfield School District, you know. These kids are important. Why? I mean, I don't know. Do anything to protect these kids. What's the big deal?
Rich, are you been following the legislation, what's going on as far as funding and resource officers?
A little bit, yeah.
My understanding is there's two different bills, but the one dealing directly with resource officers are every school district will get $50,000.
Potentially.
Potentially. It's passed one of the houses and it's going to the other one.
Correct.
So.
And I don't know all the details of that, but I know some of the basics.
Are we premature to making a decision on this? Waiting to see what they come up with as far as how we would fund things and do things like that?
Mark, I spoke about this last week. I think we need to get ahead. You know, we talked about many different things, funding, the House file that's now in the Senate. We talked about, is it New London, Winfield, and Wayland's issue? My thoughts are, and I'll repeat what I said last week, you guys are the Henry County Supervisors, I'm the Henry County Sheriff. I think we need to get ahead of this. I think Perry is a perfect example on January 4th, where a couple people lost their lives and several were injured. I can tell you that in the last week, Deputy Lopez, who's part-time in New London now, yielded a complaint in the New London School District where there was threats of violence. You know, I think Mrs. Graber's right. It's a matter of when, not if. I think we need to get ahead of it. Yes, if we can get the grant, Mark, you know how I am with grants, I'll get it if I can. You know, we're looking at the Cops Fast grant. We had talked about that last week. That's 100% reimbursement the first year, and it's a 5-year grant. Chad and I talked about it yesterday. It'll potentially refund mathematically about 3 years worth of salary. It's 175, 50, and 25 over 5 years. To me, I think that grant would be great, but I think we need to take action and get ready, because she's right. It's a matter of when. We had a complaint at New London last week of violence. Luckily, we've thwarted that without anything bad happening. You know, I did bring along some officials from New London and Winfield schools who've been in discussions with me about this, and they're free to speak if they wish, but I think we need to get ahead of it.
Yeah, last year I was here when we started this, and I know you guys had some concern, like what happens when someone wants full-time and keep expanding stuff. I think that has a lot to say for what parents and school districts want. It's not about, money. It's about safety, it's about security, it's about being proactive. I get it that you could still have something bad happen. I can never look a parent in the eye or a grandparent or anybody and say, I guarantee you this. I can't. If I have an SRO, I have that guarantee I still can't give, but response time and getting things minimized or whatever is gonna be greater. I can tell you that our discipline and our problems that we have, when the sheriff's vehicle is parked out in front, our kids know. When it's not, we have more problems. I mean, kids are gonna be kids and stuff. But, so it provides just a lot. It's being proactive. My school board's the one that said, we'll take this on full time, and we know that that's gonna be, $50-some thousand increase. We know it's gonna be probably somewhere in 73,000 or so. And there's no funding for that. Sir, you talked about a grant in the bill. What would happen is if you are over 8,000 students, then you would be required to have an SRO. If you're under, there's grant opportunities. That doesn't mean every school would get that grant and stuff. I would hope that when you write grants, that they would take in consideration that we have been proactive and moved forward and gotten SRO and received that. If we don't, you know what? We've already taken the steps necessary to say this is important to us.
What school were you at?
I'm with New London. Sorry.
Okay.
Yep. I would just ask that you really consider what Rich is asking. That you provide another deputy to backfill what I'm looking for, and and I'll turn it over to Winfield and let their high school principal talk as well. But, you know, yeah, so, thank you.
Go ahead.
Art, do you have a question? Sorry.
No,
I got a question for you. I'm not sure what your name is.
Chad Wahls.
Chad, nice to meet you. One thing, have you approached New London City Police Department?
So we-
And inquired about it and worked out any details or tried to work out any detail? Because
Good question.
it seems like, I think it is a good question because
Yeah.
New London School District, in my mind, there needs to be a New London Police Department element in that, in some mix. You
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
whether it be
Yep.
halftime or
Yep.
some mix in that. I realize that getting staff hired for the police department is problematic. I think it's
Yep.
problematic everywhere.
Yeah. So, a year ago, before it was probably about this time is when we started talking about an SRO for this current school year. We talked with our local police department and city council and stuff. They were in the challenge of, New London has the plan, or they always have, that we have 3 full-time deputies. They want someone almost 24 hours around the clock on service and stuff. They haven't been able to fill that position. They did temporarily for a while, but they haven't been able to fill that position for probably close to going on 2+ years. So what they were able to say that they could provide us is just like drop-ins, checks. They'd come in, we'll walk through the halls, we'll do this, 10 minutes or something. But like if Deputy Lopez isn't there, like let's say tomorrow if Deputy Lopez isn't there, and we have an incident where we need law enforcement, we do call them and they will come in. We also keep Deputy Lopez up to speed because he's in there, the days he's in there and stuff. So we want both parties to work together, but they are not in a position to be able to provide us anything more than sort of stop-ins, check-ins, stuff like that. They can't provide us full days, half days, or anything like that. They would have to make a change to what they were providing to the city at that point and stuff. So yeah, that's where we're at with that. And so our plan is, the expansion is just with Deputy Lopez. Obviously, and the Henry County Sheriff, he's been there for the whole year. There's a lot of training. 10:30, we're gonna do a intruder training in our high school. On the 29th, we'll do and this is the second one this year. We have got stock the bleed kits. We've had more training for our staff and our students than we ever have before. So that's what's nice about having him consistent. Our kids, our teachers here and get everything, and we just continue to do more and more training. The plan is for next year, he's going to get trained, and he's also going to provide DARE. We're going to do the DARE program probably in 5th grade, and then we might do it again in like 7th or 8th grade, just because that's our transition of our kids from 5th go to our high school is all 6th or 8th. So preparing 5th graders to have to make good choices when they get mixed in with a lot of older kids, and then preparing 8th graders that now when you become a high schooler, sometimes those choices and peer pressure change and stuff. So.
Chad, may I ask
Yeah.
you, sorry for interrupting.
No, you're good.
May I ask you, has your school board made the decision to have Mr. Lopez?
Yep.
As a full-time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
So when you say full-time, does that mean 40 hours per week? Does that mean 46 hours a week?
Yep.
Does that mean if
Yep.
there's a school activity at 6 o'clock at night, he's gonna be there for that as well? And
Yep.
how's that compensation
Yep.
working?
Yeah,
How
so
many
it-
hours per
yeah.
year is he going to
So
be?
I would give Rich our school calendar for the following year, and he would be able to follow that. Obviously, like last week, we didn't have school Good Friday. He would have worked Monday through Thursday. Rich could have potentially said, hey, to fulfill your 40 hours, I'm gonna put you on the road on Friday and give someone else a day off or whatever. Obviously, in a school, you have Christmas break, which is, let's say, 10 to 12 typical days. He could utilize him then. Obviously, during summer months, he could utilize him differently. But yeah, it would be typically 40 hours a week. If we wanted to say we want 40, but like, let's say he was full-time this whole week, we have prom on Saturday, maybe we want him in attendance at prom to deter any students from trying to come, you know, to the prom events under the influence. We would just hire that as well, and we'd pay that extra, or we just work that out between Rich and I of how to shuffle that time or whatever around. But
Ironically, he's scheduled for prom on Saturday.
yeah, he is. So yeah, did that answer your question?
It does to a degree, so
Okay.
do you get, okay,
Go ahead.
overtime?
Ironically, Greg, it's a penny for penny reimbursement. So if Carlos works 30 hours or 50 hours, New London reimburses the county penny for penny.
Yep.
And not just labor, it's healthcare, uniforms, tires,
You have to,
gasoline,
I'm worried
every,
about the fair labor laws.
all costs.
That's more than anything,
Right,
you know,
Yep.
because you shouldn't violate those.
Right.
I guess I'll put it that
Yep.
way. Yes, sir,
I'll turn it
if
over
you'd
to you.
introduce yourself, I don't know.
Yeah. My name's Gaige Gill. I'm the 612 principal at Winfield Mt. Union. I'm a graduate of Winfield Mt. Union. I've lived in New London most of my life. I go to church down the street at St. Alphonsus, so you know I'm back now as the principal, and since taking on that role, you know I see families and their kids in their best and worst times, I'd say. And on some of their worst days, you know, even at Winfield Mt. Union, you know, there's been some kind of scary events that we've had to investigate, you know, try to put proactive measures in place, you know, try to do what we can to educate kids, but also to keep them safe. And so, you know, Sheriff McNamee talked about Perry, and obviously that is, you know, the extreme of what we're trying to put things in place within our school to prevent, you know, to be proactive. But I will also say, you know, there's a lot of things from small incidences to, you know, something as terrible as Perry that happens quite often in a school. And so, you know, the officer, if we are so fortunate, you know, to be in a school with an SRO, can help with the response of those things, to help also though with a lot of education and helping our families, you know, helping our students, and also helping just kind of train and teach people in our school. You know, one of the reasons why I'm, you know, excited for the possibility is Deputy Lopez, he's constantly communicating with families, you know, who have a lot of stuff going on. He's dealing with, you know, truancy. He's, you know, teaching our teachers how to be safe, you know, training students on all sorts of things. And so, you know, if in our worst moments we're ready, you know, for the worst, but also if those worst moments are less and less because we have that positive resource, that's really, you know, what I want for Winfield Mt. Union. You know, I have 2 kids. I also feel like I have 210 kids. You know, I have 6th through 12th graders, and you know, they come to school with a lot of backgrounds. You know, and they bring this stuff from home into the school, and we do what we can during the school day. And so, you know, I just ask you to kind of think of that. If you knew there was someone real close that could respond, you know, but also to teach them, you know, how to be better at the same time, you know, I think it would be a great resource. So, yeah.
With that, have you talked to the Winfield Police Department?
Yes, sir. So,
Who did you speak with?
so I've spoken with the mayor and the city council. The city council, yes, sir.
Have you spoke to the police chief about that?
Yep. So our police chief is retiring at the end of next year. And so at the beginning of this school year, the mayor and myself and the city council, we've been in actually constant discussions. Right now, Winfield, the city of Winfield, does not have a full-time police officer. So it's Jeff Dietrich is the chief, and he is part-time. He also has other jobs, and then we have 3 part-time police officers on the Winfield PD, and they work for other places like Louisa County. There's one at Mount Pleasant PD, might be even a part-time county sheriff on there. So we don't have a full-time. So the city they're trying hard to find a way where maybe we could have SRO with them. It just doesn't seem like that's feasible for them, because they would have to have one person rather than several people to cover their hours. And so that is something we have looked into. They are also aware that we're in talks with the county. That was a goal for me to be transparent with them. So they knew, like, hey, we're looking into both options and trying to find whatever could work.
May I ask, what number of hours or time commitment are you asking for?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, right now, honestly, the contract that New London has is what we feel we could really utilize and would be an amount where we use the resources well, which is up to 20 hours a week. And within that, you know, Sheriff McNamee and Officer Lopez and I have actually talked numerous times about if, you know, Waco and Winfield Mt. Union are playing football on a Friday night. Maybe he comes a little less during the week, but he's at that event, you know, where it'd just be good to have a little more presence and to not come at consistent hours throughout the day. So there's that element of surprise, you know. So up to 20, but there might be a week where it's 10. We've kind of talked about how Officer Lopez might need to be called. There might be an accident or there might be an event somewhere. And so he would leave and not be here maybe at a time he was supposed to be, but he could show up at a different time. And so for our school,
Right.
you know, we're flexible and that'd be something we could communicate. We have approved the 4-day week for next year. So we'll be going to school Tuesday through Friday. So we feel like 20 hours, you know, split however the county needs to split it would be very helpful for us.
This morning I spoke with Chief Dietrich, Winfield.
Yep.
I asked him, I said, have you been approached? He said in the past, but nothing real recent. Is that accurate?
I mean, we've been in talks, but now it's kind of with the city council and the mayor.
But the Winfield PD would very much like to take part in a school resource officer role in some manner up there, you know. Yeah, how that works out, I don't know, but just, they would like to be part, local office, local entity, local jurisdiction, that type of thing. So they would like to be part of that.
The way the city has, how we've kind of talked about it is, right now, they want a full-time, and they don't have the funds to raise it. I don't want to speak for them, that's just the conversation we had in the open board meeting last week. So, for an SRO, our school gets sharing dollars. So we get what would be 2 students, it's about $15,000 from the state. And so we've kind of talked about if we had 20 hours a week, there's about 34 weeks-ish in a year, you have some half weeks in there. So the cost would be about $34,000. So the cost to our district would be about $19,000 after we get that $15,000 from the state. And so we kind of feel at WMU that's about what we can afford. And so we've presented that to the city that, hey, if we could give you this $34,000, you know, is that enough to get the job done? And what they're, you know, struggling to figure out is, will that allow them to have a full-time who could be kind of SRO / full-time and some part-times? Because right now their law enforcement's kind of supplemented in a lot of part-time guys.
I'm gonna ask Rich this question. Providing what Gabe has just said of 20 hours a week, current deputy staffing with deputies at 12, which I know you're at 11 right now, Rich, because one gentleman has resigned. Is there a way internally that your deputies could cover that 20 hours at this point in time? Because we're at 20, we might be at 30 next week. What I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to figure out, hiring a full-time person is a large expense.
Yep.
Back to the county taxpayers.
It is.
Okay, so is it possible, and don't wanna short staff our current staff.
Right.
You know, short time that they're not able to do their other duties.
It's
Is
a
it-
very
is it-
simple answer. Right? We're doing that currently with Carlos part-time in New London. With New London wanting full-time and Winfield wanting part-time, that's why I'm here asking for an additional deputy. Because I cannot cover the roads of Henry County without adding a deputy to cover that full-time spot. To respond a little bit about the police departments, we talked about this last week. Yes, I have discussed it with them. I talked over with Ryan Wilka in New London. I talked over with Jeff Dietrich in Winfield. I've even talked to Doug over in Wayland just a little bit. and they're all in the same boat. But my theory, like I said last week, is not all these students live in New London, not all of them live in Winfield, not all of them live in Wayland, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, I know there's students that go to New London, and Mr. Wahls can probably answer this better than I. There's Mount Pleasant students that go to New London, there's New London students that go to New London, there's Danville students, there's maybe some Winfield students, and I know there's a Burlington student.
114 open enrolled kids here.
114 open enroll. I knew you'd know that better than I do. But Greg, your daughter lived in rural Salem. My children lived in rural Salem. Everybody around the room can say where they're from. They don't all live in a town. So as the county sheriff, I'm saying we need to work on this. Are we opposed to working with any of those police departments? Absolutely not. Ryan Wilkin, I've had great conversations about New London, and he's welcome in the building whether Carlos is there or not. The same would go for Jeff Dietrich and his officers, or Doug over in Wayland. We're not trying to fight with them. We're trying to mesh with them and make it the best coverage we can. But as the county sheriff, I think we should take care of every kid, including the ones that live rural route or don't even live in the county if they're attending one of our schools.
I agree.
As a taxpayer, I agree.
Okay, my concern is this, and you're aware of this, and most of the citizens probably are aware of this. When we get 3 years down the road, and the budget, and our max levy is $350, and we have to start cutting positions at the county, what happens at that point in time? That's my point, Rich.
I can
You
respond
know
to that
there's-
as well,
there's
Greg.
$1.3 million.
Last November, you know what I'm gonna say, last November you asked me to cut 105. I came into my budget proposal, let me finish please. I came into my budget proposal on January 15th, I believe, whatever the date was, and I cut 4 positions. Yes, they were open, they were not, I didn't cut people, I cut open positions with the offer of adding this deputy. So I cut 4, which was a little over 400,000 to supplement this one position. So I went above and beyond knowing that it was a big ask. Knowing that it was a big ask. Instead of cutting 100, I cut 4. And I asked to feed one back. So I was prepared. I made some major changes to my department in effort to do that. And just, I've been hearing feedback all week long because of this. My civil clerks were not gone for the last year. Several of them retired in the summer last summer. My jail position was only open a month, and my dispatch position had been vacated in March, filled in June, vacated again in August, and it's been open since. So those positions had not been open long term. I've been trying to fill them, but our workforce is hard to fill. It's really hard to fill, but I sacrificed them because this deputy and the school resource position is that important.
Can I ask one more question? And I'm asking the question, I'm not being a smart aleck, just so you understand. But if it's net for net, why would you not do it? As a taxpayer, explain to me why you wouldn't do it.
Because we have to levy on expenses, not revenue, and that's completely different.
You levy on expenses and not revenue. So regardless if I could give you $600,000 and it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Wow.
And that's where,
problem with
when I
government.
say the $3.50, which is legislated down to us, we didn't make the choice. But we have to be at $3.50 in budget year 27, 28, 20, oh, okay, 24, 25, 26, 28, 29.
And I'm prepared to make those cuts in my office.
Our growth that we can levy against usually is under 3%. We had 3.3% growth this last year. But in the years that I've been in office, 11 plus, we've had only one other time where it was above 3%. So the compounding effect you can see is
Oh, sure.
not good.
Sure.
So
But-
what that means is if you can't fund them, if you don't have the tax dollars that you can collect from the property owners who pay taxes in this county, okay?
Boy, do I.
You still have employee expenses.
Yeah.
You have insurance costs on top of that, you have FICA and IPERS,
I run a business, so I
yeah,
understand that. I guess I'm
It
just
gets
not
to
sure why
compounding, so
public
basically,
safety isn't
I
the
figured
top.
when the law came into effect, you would have to grow at 8% to keep up with the same dollars 4 years out. But we can't grow 8%. We don't grow 8%, and even if we did, the state of Iowa says you have to come in and then drop it down with a formula, the cap.
Right.
Is it 3?
Right.
If you get 3, you gotta go 2.
I'd rather you cut a clerk than a public safety officer.
I could
That's,
too.
see, that's.
I mean,
that's
just
where-
as a taxpayer, I
That's where,
can say I'd
that's
rather
where
be
we're
safe.
at.
I'd
you
rather
know.
our kids
Where,
be safe.
where do
Mary, what
those,
did you
where do
say?
those cuts come? Where do they come? That's a decision.
I said, as a taxpayer, I would rather see a clerk's job cut
Yeah.
than a public safety.
Right.
I'm not one of you, and I don't have to do that, so just remember that.
That's what
I
you're
know
That's
that.
what you're asking right now.
That's what I'm
That's-
asking.
That's what that's what's being asked of us, to cut somebody else to hire somebody in the future.
And that was my proposal in January. I cut 2 clerks, a jailer and a dispatcher.
Well, we
and
have
that
a
was
budget for
this.
this year, for next year coming up, and that's what we're asking for. That was what would be the ask for the future. Every new hire in the sheriff's office, in whatever form, because what I'm looking at also, Waco and Mount Pleasant, they could say, we're not gonna fund it anymore, the city would come to us. I'm looking at least 4 officers, potential, and very realistic. And also, I still think we're being just a little bit premature until we know what the legislature is giving us for this coming year in dollars for resource officers. That is not set in stone yet, and I'd hate to make a decision until I know exactly what it is.
I respect your opinion 100%, but I do disagree with you.
I don't disagree,
Yeah.
we don't need a resource officer
Yeah.
at all.
But I'm not, I guess I don't understand. When I run my business, there's chances I have to take. You have to take the chance. You have to. I get that. And sometimes you have to say, there's no way this is gonna work. But there's other times you gotta make it work.
So I have a question about the legislation. If it were to go into effect, and maybe no one knows the answer to this, but I know it probably wouldn't be 50,000 because we don't have any districts that have 8,000 kids here. But how would that work if these grant positions, or maybe it's a partial grant or whatever? How would that work and factor in at some point?
You're asking the question that I wanna have answered before we make a decision.
But here's my question to that. So where does it, I've never read anything in legislation where the money would come to you.
Didn't say it come to us.
So that's my question is, exactly. So that's my question. What is the difference if I write a grant or I don't write a grant, but I'm willing to pay the bill?
We have the expense against it.
So the legislation isn't gonna make any
I need
difference.
to find out how it's written to see if it's a pass-through or not. That makes a complete difference to us.
But right now, it's not making a difference because you're getting the money from New London
No, it
to,
is making us a difference.
but you just said that it has to be based on the expense, not the income. So I guess I'm not sure how a grant or whatever is a potential would impact any different than the way it's already impacting, because it doesn't matter if the dollars are being written from the New London School District or a state grant or the FAST grant or any of that. You're saying that doesn't matter, right?
Right now, it's an expense to the county and nobody else.
So how would it not be an expense to the county if it's still a deputy? In the future, it would just be a different source of income. Am I wrong?
It is
I don't
still
know,
an
I'm just
expense
asking.
regardless. It's an expense regardless, whether we have the grant or we don't have the grant. It's still an expense to the county sheriff's budget. But it's reimbursable. Right now, New London and potentially Winfield will reimburse it. If we get the grant, that would reimburse it. If we get the COPS Fast grant, that would reimburse it. Regardless, it's gonna be an expense to the county. I realize that.
Does that reimburse the county 100% for that deputy?
It depends on which one you're asking. The COPS Fast grant will be 100 the first year, 75, 50, and 25 over 5 years. The New London paying it out of their budget is reimbursing for their full-time position, penny for penny, and same with Winfield on a part-time basis.
Still, if we hire a full-time deputy, we are adding money to the county's budget for the time they are not in the schools.
Correct.
How much is that?
It's approximately a third of the annual cost,
Which is?
but $96,729.
So it adds
But
30,000.
those two schools together, their reimbursement is equal to or greater than the county's expense for the year, for the entire year, including my time. So I'm asking to put an SRO in 2 schools, but I'm asking for 1 deputy, not 2. If they were wanting both full-time, I'd be asking for 2. But I'm not, because we don't need it.
So I'm not trying to be a smart aleck like here, but I said, what are we to do as supervisors when the other schools come and say, we want them now too?
Mark, you won't like my answer, but I think we need to seriously, let me finish, please. We seriously need to consider it, because this is a youth of our county. Like I said a moment ago, it isn't the city of New London's youth, it isn't the city of Winfield's youth, it's Henry County and beyond youth. I think we need to seriously look at it. How we can make it work, I don't know the answer, I'd already have it done. I'm asking you for the ability to place that deputy on staff and make it happen, because our youth is that important. You know, I don't have children in school anymore either. I have a couple in college, and I'll have a grandson that's gonna come to school soon, but maybe I should have had Jeff Olson here, because his son works at, or his daughter works at Perry School District, and she could speak firsthand about this. I'll go back to the data I stated earlier. 338 people have been killed or hurt in the last 6 years, and there's been 192 shootings. What more do we need to say, let's make this happen? Let's make it happen regardless of how we have to make it happen. You know, I can talk about revenue, because I try and generate revenue. I've generated more revenue than any sheriff in Henry County history back to the 1800s to try and make these things happen. I don't know how else to explain it. I'm trying my darndest to make it happen, and if I didn't need your clearance, I'd already have the deputy and hiring process done. But I need your clearance to fund it in the future, and I can afford to do it.
I think, real quick, the last thing to add to this is a year-to-year agreement. We don't get an agreement for 5 years or 10 years. This is year-to-year. So if you're concerned about next year's budget or whatever, you obviously have the voting power and the rights next year after you go, you know, if you allow this, you can look at that, you know. I get it in my job, I look from year to year, but I also have to look 5 years out and 10 years out. I have to do what you're doing. But if I know I can do something for a year, then I'm gonna do it. And then I'll evaluate it 6 months in or whatever and say, and have conversations, you know, find different funding streams, whatever it is. And all I ask is that we move forward and do this, and then we meet around the table again in November. If this is something that you're concerned about, then you put it back on me as a superintendent at New London, you put it back on Winfield, and we need to reach out to, I guess, our local, you know, police departments again and see if we can do a shared agreement that way. Right now, we're not in the position to do that, at least in New London. It sounds like Winfield would like to do a part of that of some sort, but to what degree, I don't know. But you know, both districts are wanting it. Both districts financially in our budget can afford it and can do it, and we're just looking for your support in that. So you had a question?
Yeah, thanks. Yesterday, Rich and I talked out of his office, 45 minutes, an hour, something like that. Creative accounting would solve the problem, it sounds like. I don't know, legally, the county can't do that. They can't do that. Is there a way that the schools could step up and create any form of like an escrow account that would fund those a year ahead of time, so that money would be there? I'm asking because I don't know that
You mean
answer.
pay for the position a year in advance?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you get audited, you gotta have year to year, you know,
But
and
I
stuff.
mean,
But I mean,
there's pop can funds
Yeah.
that get audited. I mean,
no, I know. So you're asking basically, is New London in a position to say that we would commit to more long-term,
I-
2
I
years,
guess
3 years?
I'm just asking for creative ideas on how to put something like this together to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's not a soul in here or a soul in the courthouse that says having a school resource officer is a bad idea.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that anywhere.
Yeah.
But how do we make it work? How do you make it happen? Is an escrow account a possibility? I mean, it's a little out of the ordinary, I get that and everything, but is it possible?
Is there
And-
no, there, when you're budgeting, on the, as a county, do you have reimbursable expenses? Is that you know, some places it's a pass-through? I'm asking that question
The
because,
revenue would be budgeted as well as the expense. But it's a reimbursement for it. And the thing of it is, it's not, I haven't seen that it's the whole reimbursement for that entire employee. But as Rich said, if we get the other, it will be, but we don't know that yet.
Well, it's reimbursable 100%, hour to hour. It's not reimbursable annually. It's not reimbursable annually because Carlos works for me in the summer and winter months and not the school.
And that's what.
But for every hour he's in the school, it's 100% reimbursed. Penny for penny. Robin and I calculated that together. Insurance, FICA,
Right.
IPERS, uniforms, tires,
And I
etc.
think what they're thinking about is the other time,
The other third of the year.
the other
I
third of
understand.
the year is, can we afford another deputy that
Sure.
other third of the year? Or do you
Sure.
just hire somebody to be a resource officer?
I understand what you're saying.
Is what they're looking at.
And I'll go back to my budget presentation. I cut those 4 positions because they're open, and I sacrificed the lamb. And I think cutting 4 for a third of a deputy is more than fair.
Is that possible to hire a resource officer?
I don't think it's impossible.
I mean, period, that's the only thing that employee does. is
It's
a
certainly
resource
thinking outside the
officer.
box, and I think it's potential. Whether we could do it in reality with our current hiring trends, maybe, maybe not. I don't know, Greg.
Because I think the bill says, school resource officer or security officer of some sort on school districts less than 8,000 student body, right?
Yeah, for the grant, yeah. Over 8,000, I
So
think it's pretty much
I
mandated.
was
that you
questioning
have.
the definition of the SRO or a security officer, what that difference is, you know, what,
So that was asked us by just our public, like, why have we looked into hiring someone, a retired officer, some? Well, once you retire, you lose all of your,
Accreditation.
yeah. So, you know, that's like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to make fun, but that's like a mall cop, you know, type
you
of
know,
thing or whatever.
somewhere in this United States, I bet there's some type of training for an SRO, or a school security officer, because I know there's been reach out from retired veterans
Yeah.
that would love to have that idea to go into the school and coke and joke with students and intermingle with that, you know, on that type of basis, you know, and
Yeah.
we're not talking,
Yep.
you know, huge hourly figures per hour rates or anything like that either. It's more of a community service type thing. I know there'd have to be buy-in from the school districts and everything to the nth degree, yeah, but if a problem exists, there's an answer somewhere.
The only challenge with that is if you can't do any more than me as a superintendent or building principal, you know, like, you know, that's why people have SAMs or they have assistant principal or whatever to deal with more discipline. But when you bring a resource officer in, now you can
They're the law.
yeah, they're the law, and you can, you know, file different things and hold them to a greater accountability. And trust me, you were a kid once, you know how that word travels, you know, through the.
When I was a kid, my principal put his hand
Well,
on my
I know.
neck and give me a good massage.
Well, if I do that today,
You know,
I'll be
do
looking
that
for a
today.
job by
Or you'll be seeing
4,
Rich by.
you know,
And
or
that's
something.
one reason why Winfield Mt. Union started going the county route. The trainings that Officer Lopez, who's the current resource officer in New London, has, you know, are something that someone else would have to go get. Not saying it's impossible. So when we started looking into this, I reached out to 33 different schools, our size, around the state of Iowa, that had SROs. And there was one that has it with their city law enforcement, and the rest of them are all county. The one that was city is West Branch. So I took our board, our city council, excuse me, our elementary principal and a teacher, and we went up to West Branch and visited with them to see how it worked. And their budget, we found out their budget for law enforcement in their city is not what ours is. So what they provide is, they have a full-time officer, SRO, and they have a full staff as well. And that SRO is paid nicely, and so there was a reason why there was only one city. So I think you have some great ideas, you gotta get creative. But that's why we are where we are, because this is really our option, to get this done. I've looked through the other ones. I just don't want you to think I'm asking for a handout. County, help us, have done plenty of research.
Rich, I have a question. Am I wrong? This individual, if you hire, they give you the approval to do, it's a possibility we would have to pay for him to go to the law enforcement academy as well, would we not?
Of course. Any deputy would have
And
to do that.
cost is how much?
It's roughly $10,000. Yep,
So that would be an additional cost that would come out of county's coffers. That wouldn't be
Correct.
included in
Yep.
what the schools would be reimbursing.
yep, absolutely.
If school districts, as the superintendents and principals were talking about, if it's a year-to-year basis, would it be fair to that new hiree to get whacked after a year because of no need for it, no want for it? I won't ever see there's not a need for it. That's not right.
Always a need.
There's a need there.
It's up
but,
to a board to vote.
Yeah, the vote there to fund that,
Yep.
would that be?
I think we'd have to look at that, Jeff. I know times are tight, so if New London and Winfield tell me next year, sorry, we don't want you in 25, 26, I think we'd have to look at that.
And then we paid for him to possibly go to the law enforcement
Mhm.
academy, and then we say,
Yep. That's a risk with every single new
Money well
deputy.
spent.
Yep.
Sadly, knows what
I can say this, rather than terminate them or put them on permanent leave or however you wanna word it, I'd probably look at a position in the jail, because we seem to have an opening in the jail just about all the time. So I'd probably wanna put them over there and retain them.
I agree with everything being said, and as a parent of Winfield Mt Union students, my youngest just graduated last year, probably 5-6 years ago, went through a situation where we became aware of a child that was posting things that were threatening. By the time that it got to us, if there were a resource officer, and I understand nobody's arguing about the resource officer, but something could have happened. It would have been a lot quicker, I think, had there been a resource officer present. And I see this not as mutually exclusive, but as a partnership, because I think by having the county involved, they're aware of other things happening. It's not just what's in the school and that's all I'm doing. It's where is paraphernalia coming from, whatever it is. I mean, I see it as a partnership in a way that you're gaining more than just the true cost of it. And yes, I agree, there's a training cost to it, but again, that's with any position, any of us that hire and have folks know that. And I agree with Chad too, if we can think of creative ways, whether it's, I don't know, contracting may not be the way to do it, but is there another grant out there to help compensate for training? Because, like I said, that situation that I'm very much familiar with was 5 or 6 years ago, before all the concerns with behavioral health, and it's only getting worse. And kids are only in more stressful situations, like Gage was talking about. He sees them at their worst. And I saw it in the school system. They don't have the resources or the depth of knowledge that law enforcement does. And Rich's folks have a lot more resources than the Winfield PD does.
Chad, I
So
think
it's gonna be a better job, better connection.
I think you asked a good question about that relationship with the local city law enforcement, which is a good point. And that is something Sheriff McNamee has addressed, and every time we've met, that anything we would do, that city would be welcomed in and they would be a part of it, because we want to continue, that relationship, and so just so you kind of know, right now, we had a scare. We put out a message to the public where it seemed like a student might have had, a weapon and a plan. And so obviously as administration, those situations happen a lot, and I think with that SRO position, you have that follow-up and that education piece. You know, it's not just, you know, neutralize the incident or however you wanna word it, you know, it's the, let's educate the kids to make, you know, better choices, or, you know, to navigate these things better that I want to. You know, I'm not just thinking Perry, I'm thinking everything in between.
To go along with what Mr. Gill said, I talked to Lyle Murray yesterday to just get an overview of their program, and he spoke highly of it. He said, in addition to having an officer available in the school, he feels that there's been good rapport building steps made towards the students that are coming up through the schools. You know, they see officer friendly, and they're, you know, more apt to visit with officer friendly type thing than oh, there's the cop, you know, type thing. So I there's benefits to it. I mean, I'm not saying that there's not. It's just, we gotta get creative, and like what Mark said, I think this legislation bill is important to come up. I think that's, you know, if that directly gives the school boards, you know, a $50,000 check, and I think there was a caveat in there that they want that officer in the 9 through 12
I mean, that's,
attendance center, I think is their key word that they said in the bill.
I mean, that's the thing, you know, that's nice about, well, Winfield has one building.
Mhm.
We have two,
Yep.
but, you know, they're within 100 feet of each
Yep.
other.
Yep.
Our teachers know that a majority of their time is going to be spent in our 612 building, just, you know, because the things that go on in the K5 building are more just, they can be dealt with a lot easier, and it's more friendship and stuff, but, yeah.
So, when you talk about creative, don't hate me for saying this, however, I know. You know, there was an article in the paper about timesheets not too long ago. Are there people that are salaried and not coming to work that maybe need to be put on an hourly wage and paid for the hours they actually work?
Speaking of that, and creative, you outsource HR, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Can other departments be outsourced for savings, less expense? I can think of one in particular. I see in other counties, one of the supervisors is the chairman, choose the P&Z. So, I would think outsourcing for something like that, and might correct the timesheet thing too, would be a choice.
Mary answered the question that's been looked at and being looked at.
As a taxpayer, that is not right, and that's theft. And I think as a county supervisor, as 3 county supervisors, your job is to take care of that.
And that's why it's being looked at.
It should be followed through.
Absolutely.
I would fire somebody in a heartbeat. And as a taxpayer, there is no way that should be just kinda walked away from. No way. That's where voters come in, because that is the worst kind of theft, in my opinion.
Problem with part of that is a lot of those individuals are under another elected official.
I don't care.
I know, Bill,
It's
and I
not
don't
this
either.
one, I'll tell you that.
And it's not- and it's not
Emily
this
talked
one,
about that in
but,
the original meeting, I'll
um,
say it again, I have a piece of paper for every absence in my office.
That would be that way if it was mine too, but in the ones that it is
Then we need to
happening-
get rid of the elected official. You
There
as
you go.
citizens need to know that, because that is not right. And letting them get away with it is worse. Letting them get away with it makes you all look bad.
Absolutely.
And you know, I respect the 3 of you completely. It makes you look bad.
I want to clarify, the person I was talking about is not an elected official.
I think we've had plenty of discussion. We're going to bring it to a vote as a decision of approving a 13th deputy for a resource officer. I would entertain a motion to allow Rich McNamee, the Henry County Sheriff, to hire a 13th deputy for resource officer.
I'll make a motion, I want discussion afterwards.
That's fine. Is there a second to the motion?
Yes.
All right, motion, a second on the floor, discussion.
I still feel we're being very premature in making this decision until we know exactly how money is going to be funded to us from the state, or the possibility there of in what form of a resource officer. To me, it's unclear yet. Is it come to each school district that they have to provide a resource officer, and in what capacity and that type? I do not know, I don't understand that yet, so it's hard for me to just say, we'll give another deputy, and then all of a sudden, we don't have money to fund it.
I'd like to respond to that if I could.
Chad first.
I would echo that. I think what we talked about with a year-to-year review, and that position, I think that's only a fair way of moving forward. If it's not a funded position, I don't see how we can do that.
I totally agree with you.
I would also like to see this legislation, to see the final language of what comes of that. And the indicators that I got, probably within a month, we will know what that is. And I think it's an important decision to rush through. You know, if it's wait for a month to see what it's looking like,
That's all I'm asking. I think we're just being premature in making this decision right now.
I understand your concerns, and I share those, and I'm willing to look at it twice, 3 times, 4 times a year, whatever you guys want to review it. I will point out, these 2 gentlemen in their school districts are reimbursing the cost of that in totality between the 2 schools. It's not for the time they're in the schools. Between the 2 of their school districts, they're paying for the deputy entirely for the whole year. So that whether the grant and the legislation is approved or not, these 2 school districts are committed to pay the cost of that deputy for the entire year, including our time on the county roads rather than in their schools.
So Rich, I'm also looking at it, if this happens, as far as a grant or whatever form it comes in, I don't like the word grant, but if we get reimbursement, I don't know for how long. I could see the other schools coming to us and saying,
I
we
agree.
want it too, so let's do it as one lump thing.
I agree.
Any further discussion? Chad?
well, I'm thinking how to word it here. School districts, at this point in time, you're ready to pull the trigger on it now, so to speak. Maybe that's wrong.
That didn't work.
You know what I mean.
So to speak.
I mean, we already voted on it. 2 months ago, we put it before the board, and it got tabled, because, I mean, honestly, Rich and I had been talking, I had 3 new board members, come in, in November, so they're learning along the way, but, I thought we would maintain what we were doing, and that was it. Somebody did make that motion. It didn't get a second. It died. Someone made another motion. It got a second, and stuff. And so this last month, same motion was made just to maintain our 20 hours or 2 days and just increase the amount that we would give, because we knew, the per diem rate would go up. And that didn't get a second and died. Another board member made the motion to go full-time, got a second, it was voted, and it passed. So we're invested in knowing that it's gonna be about 73,000 for us next year, somewhere in that ballpark, for a full-time officer, so.
But back to Greg's position, with the understanding that that position is dependent 100% on budget funding from the school districts. Is that fair?
I clearly agree.
I think so.
Yeah. Without the schools, we don't need that deputy.
Right.
Okay. So, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the Henry County Sheriff to hire a 13th deputy as a resource officer, respond by saying aye.
Can I ask one more question?
One more question.
One more question. So the way, the motion should be that it's completely hinging upon, an annual review.
Annual review with the school board as well as the sheriff's department come budget time.
Just for some clarity on that, we do have a written contract
Sure.
with New London that will renew July 1, and we'll hopefully start a contract with Winfield July 1. I have no problem being a monthly meeting, a quarterly meeting, whatever you gentlemen would like. We can have those meetings as often or not as often as you'd like to discuss that and review it prior to July 1, so we can enact that contract, because that's all part of the contract process. Yes.
Because actually, you guys, you put the language together, and then you give it to us, we give it to our attorneys, they see if there should be any additional changes to make sure. Because obviously, in this too, always in the end is, if you guys, most contracts would read that if it was mutually agreed upon, like let's say you lost 2 deputies in November and you can't fill them, and you need that filled more than to provide us and ours, mutually agreed upon. Usually you can,
There's outs.
there's outs, so you're not left high and dry, and we're not either.
So, you wanna add with an annual review of the 28E contracts, 28E / contracts with the school districts in the county that are asking for.
I think the
We have a
review,
contract with New
I
London
think
now.
the review should be.
No, it's just a
of
contract.
us.
We call it 2080
You
agreement.
do?
Because
Well, they.
we don't know how our
that's
budget's
called
going to
is
be working for
Yeah,
years, for the next 4 years.
We can do it quarterly to begin with.
It's gonna be,
I don't have a problem with that.
cause I'm looking at this and saying to some other department, which has already been brought up, we're gonna have to get rid of one of your people if we do this. And that's a hard thing to do. Mary, I do agree with you when you say I've farmed for 55 years and I go on, you never know what's gonna happen. I do, so I know that. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. So.
Yeah.
It's just a hard decision to make. I'm not against the RSO at all. It's just that we don't know the total mechanisms, and that's where I'm having the difficulty. And I won't vote against it, I'll put it down, but I want to have some things in place for us.
Mark, I would offer you to amend your motion to include a quarterly review, at least for the first couple of years,
No,
to
I
see if
think-
it's all.
I think if we
all
have
good.
questions, we're gonna have to come to the table, everybody come to the table
Sure.
and talk it over.
Yeah, I
That's
think
only
that's great.
fair.
Yep, I think
Because
that's great.
then there's an out for us too.
Yep. And there's outs in the contract. You guys have a copy of this on this
I'm
contract.
reading all that.
Yeah.
Okay, as trying to put this into.
The motion,
I have here that to allow Sheriff McNamee to hire a 13th deputy sheriff for an SRO dependent on 100% school funding. Is that what you said? Somebody said that. Is that what, if you're wanting to be, or tell me what you want it to be?
No, I don't think it can be dependent upon 100% school funding, because the county's gonna be out putting the money,
Yeah, but it's 100% reimbursed,
okay?
is what Rich is saying.
Yeah.
Plus.
Plus. Okay, so we don't need the 100% school in there, it's just for 13th deputy.
Correct. That's,
Just wanna know what you want. I understand what you guys.
okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same signal. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Any other
gentlemen.
business come before the county? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve, adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion, is there a second to adjourn? Motion is second, discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of adjourning, respond by saying aye. Aye.
Well, there you have it, folks. Henry County, Iowa will get their 14th sheriff's deputy. And it's all been brought to you today, this coverage, I should say, has been brought to you today by Griner Auto Body, Car Doctor, McDonald Boneyard, Hinshaw Trailer Cells, Girling Repair, B&B Propane, and the family of Jet Stops. I'm your host, John Bain. Stay friendly, Southeast Iowa.